Imagine waking up in a city that has just been erased. The streets are ash, the roofs are gone, the temples are broken. The people who survived are hiding on the hills, watching smoke rise from what used to be their home. It is 390 BC. Rome has been sacked and burned by Gaulish warriors. Most places would die right here. Most cities would become a footnote. But Rome does something terrifying and unbelievable. It comes back, not as a village, not as a small town. Rome returns as the largest city on earth. More than 1 million people. Towers of stone and marble that rise like mountains. Water that flows into the city every day, as if nature itself has been engineered to obey. And if you were standing there at its peak, breathing that air, hearing that noise, you would realize something that feels impossible. This is not just ancient history. This is the blueprint of the modern world. Today, I want to take you into Rome at its height, moving close, building by building, moment by moment, so you can feel what it was like to live inside the machine that controlled 3 continents and roughly 70 million people. We are not going to float above it like a postcard. We are going to step into it. Because the truth is, Rome was not built to impress you. Rome was built to hold power, and power always leaves scars. You enter the heart of the city, and the first thing you notice is the sound. Footsteps on stone, carts grinding across uneven streets, merchants shouting prices, metal striking metal somewhere nearby, the murmur of a crowd that never fully disappears. Then the space opens. You are standing in the Roman Forum. This is not just a plaza. This is the control room of an empire. Every road of ambition leads here. Every deal, every betrayal, every victory parade, every public promise, every public lie. The Forum is crowded with temples and monuments, but do not let the beauty distract you. The real danger is not the marble. The real danger is what happens in this space when the crowd turns. On one side stands the Curia, the Senate House. 600 senators gather inside, arguing, negotiating, threatening, shaping laws that can feed a province or crush it. They debate taxes, borders, punishments, war. The building is still standing today. It is one of the best preserved structures in the Forum, which feels strange, because in its time it was not a museum piece, it was a weapon. Now look toward the middle of the plaza. You see the rostra, the speaker's platform. This is where words become fire. This is where a man can calm a city or ignite it. And one day, after Julius Caesar is assassinated, Mark Antony stands here. Ancient sources tell us he holds up Caesar's blood-stained toga. He reads Caesar's will aloud. He reveals that Caesar has left money and gardens to the citizens of Rome. Think about that moment. A crowd that is already furious suddenly feels chosen, rewarded, claimed. Grief turns into rage. Rage turns into action. The crowd cremates Caesar's body right there in the Forum. Right on that spot, Romans build the temple of Julius Caesar. They turn a murdered politician into something more than a man. They declare him a god. That is what Rome does. It takes blood and turns it into a monument. But if you want to understand what Romans feared more than assassins, more than foreign armies, more than political collapse, you have to walk a little farther. You find a small circular temple, the Temple of Vesta. It does not look like the center of the world, but to Romans, it is. Inside, a flame burns continuously for more than 1,000 years. It is tended by the Vestal Virgins. Romans believe that if this flame ever goes out, the empire itself will fall. So the flame must live, no matter what. The women who guard it serve for 30 years. They must remain virgins. If they break their vow, the punishment is burial alive. That is not a metaphor, that is the rule. And yet these women hold privileges no other Roman women have. They can own property. They can pardon prisoners. They walk through the city with a kind of authority that makes even powerful men pause. For centuries, they are among the most important figures in Rome, until Christianity ends the tradition in 394 AD. So here in one plaza, you have the Senate, the sacred flame, the speaker's platform, and the place where a crowd burned a dead leader and demanded the future. And this is only the beginning, because the men who ruled the empire did not live here. They lived above it. You climb upward to Palatine Hill. From here, you can look down on the Forum and understand why emperors chose this place. You can see the heart of Rome beating below you. You can also feel how far away it is from ordinary life. The emperors turned the entire hill into a palace complex. You find the Domus Augusti, the House of Augustus, Rome's first emperor. Compared to what comes later, it is modest, almost restrained. But do not let that fool you. This is where the imperial tradition
These are the
begins.
latest decrees from the
This is where the
Senate.
idea
We await
forms
your
that one
guidance,
person
please.
can sit
I
above the
shall review
republic
them.
and call
The
it
Republic is
stability.
secure in our
Centuries
stability.
pass, and then
Augustus built a
an emperor
residence.
named
We shall
Domitian
build a city of
decides that
palaces,
modesty is
double the height
weakness.
on the
He
eastern
builds
wing.
bigger,
Eve,
much bigger.
keep the pace,
He
move
creates
those
the
blocks.
Domus
I
Flavia,
have never
a
witnessed
massive
such
ceremonial
opulence.
palace where he holds state banquets that can seat
Our
hundreds.
king's gifts
Foreign
seem
kings are
meager.
received in throne rooms with ceilings around 30 meters high. Visitors are meant to feel small. They are meant to feel lucky to be allowed inside. Right next to it stands the Domus Augustana, the private residence. This is where the emperor actually lives. Bedrooms, private baths, gardens and courtyards hidden from most eyes. Domitian effectively has two worlds side by side, one for performance, one for reality. And then he adds something that tells you everything about Roman power and Roman insecurity. A private stadium about 160 meters long. An arena for the imperial family and their closest friends. A place where the emperor can watch chariot races, athletic competitions, and gladiatorial combat without ever leaving home. The Circus Maximus is right down the hill, seating more than 150,000 people. But for Domitian, that is not enough. He needs his own. Now go down from Palatine Hill into the roar of the city, because the real obsession of Rome is not politics. It is spectacle. The Circus Maximus is the largest stadium in the ancient world. More than 150,000 Romans pack inside to watch chariot racing, the most dangerous and addictive sport in the empire. Picture the track, the teams, the noise. Drivers race at speeds that ancient sources and modern estimates often place up to around 75 kilometers per hour in bursts, throwing their bodies and horses into turns that can kill in an instant. Crashes are so violent they earn a name that tells you how Romans saw them. Shipwrecks. Some charioteers tie the reins around their waists so they can control the horses with more force. If they crash, they can be dragged to death. And yet they do it anyway, because if they survive, they can become absurdly wealthy. One famous driver earns enough in his career that later writers claim it could feed the entire city of Rome for a year. That is not just money, that is myth-making. Fans choose sides with the intensity of religion. Blues, greens, reds, whites. Their loyalty is so extreme that riots break out in the stands. Sometimes, thousands die. This is not a sport that sits politely in the background. This is identity. This is social pressure. This is rage with uniforms. But as immense as the Circus Maximus is, the most famous venue in Rome is the Colosseum. Smaller, around 50,000 seats. Yet it survives almost 2,000 years. And inside, the violence is not an accident. It is the point. For about 300 years, an often repeated estimate puts deaths in this arena at around 400,000 people. Gladiators, criminals, prisoners, slaves. Hundreds of thousands of animals are slaughtered. Lions brought from Africa, bears from Germany, elephants from Egypt. The empire reaches out with a net and drags the world into one building so the crowd can watch it bleed. A typical day begins with executions at dawn, then animal hunts at midday, then gladiators in the afternoon. And what makes it possible is hidden beneath your feet. Under the arena floor is a two-story labyrinth, a world of darkness and sweat, where enslaved workers operate machines, including 28 elevators, lifting animals and fighters up through trapdoors. From the crowd's perspective, a lion appears as if by magic. The Romans do not see the machinery, they see the miracle. During the 100-day opening games alone, ancient accounts say about 5,000 animals are killed. It goes on for centuries. And if you stand here long enough, you begin to understand something unsettling. Rome trains its citizens to accept violence as entertainment, and then it builds an empire that runs on force. Now, after all this blood and noise, you might think Rome is only iron and cruelty, but Rome is also deeply religious. Temples rise across the city, each dedicated to a god, each promising protection, victory, fertility, safe travel, political legitimacy. Then you reach a building that feels different. The Pantheon. In reconstructions, some details of its original decoration must be educated guesses because bronze fittings and ornamental elements were stripped away long ago. But the heart of it is real and it still stands. The Pantheon is built to honor all gods at once. That is what the word means. All gods. It is a way of covering every base, every divine alliance, every fear. The building we see today is linked to Emperor Hadrian, who rebuilds it in the early 2nd century AD. Step inside. The dome spans about 43 meters across. No internal supports, just concrete and genius. Above you is the oculus, a single opening at the top. Light pours in like a living thing. Now consider the shock of time. You can stand beneath this same dome that Romans stood under about 1,900 years ago. This design influences architecture for 2,000 years, from Renaissance domes to major civic buildings, including the United States Capitol. And the reason the Pantheon survives when so many other temples do not is simple. It becomes a church in 609 AD. In Rome, survival often depends on being useful to the next power. Yet even the Pantheon is not the most sacred building Rome ever had. That honor belongs to a temple that does not survive. The Temple of Jupiter on Palatine Hill, the king of the gods, towering above the Forum. Built in 509 BC, one of Rome's oldest and largest temples, dedicated to Jupiter, Juno, and Minerva, the three most important gods in the Roman state. This is where triumphal processions end. Imagine a general returning from conquest. He enters the city with prisoners, treasure, and victorious soldiers. He climbs Palatine Hill and offers sacrifices to Jupiter. It is not just gratitude. It is a public statement that the gods approve of Rome expanding. For more than 800 years, this temple is a spiritual anchor, visible across the city. But fires destroy it multiple times, and in the end, almost nothing remains. Rome is full of places like this, places that once felt permanent, reduced to fragments. Now we turn from religion to the force that truly builds the empire, the military. Rome is powerful because its armies are disciplined, well-organized, relentless, and yet Roman tradition forbids troops inside the city. Soldiers belong on the frontiers, not in the streets of the capital. But emperors fear their own people, and they fear rivals even more. So they break tradition. They station the Praetorian Guard near Rome, at the Castra Praetoria. This is not a small camp. It is a fortress, built in 23 AD, just outside the city. At their peak, the Praetorian Guard numbers around 10,000 soldiers. They are elite, prestigious, paid about 3 times more than regular troops. They are the emperor's bodyguards, and they become the emperor's greatest threat. Because when the men with weapons live closest to the throne, they begin to believe they can choose who sits on it. The Praetorians assassinate at least 13 emperors. They overthrow dynasties. And once, they sell the imperial throne to the highest bidder in an auction. Let that sink in. The most powerful position on earth sold like property. The Castra Praetoria has thick fortified walls, not primarily to defend against foreign enemies, but to house the most politically dangerous force in Rome. So, how would you recognize a Praetorian in a crowd? In ceremonial settings, look for the helmet crest running side to side, a transverse crest, often shown as red. Regular soldiers typically have the crest front to back. Look for richer armor, such as scale armor with finer craftsmanship. Look for a red oval shield with symbols associated with the unit, sometimes described with scorpions, stars, and moons in artistic depictions. Look for ornate details, a decorated belt, a ceremonial spear, a sword scabbard made to be seen, but in reality, their appearance can vary widely. On campaign, they look like standard legionaries. On patrol, they may blend into civilian dress. At state functions, they become spectacle themselves. In Rome, context is everything. Now, while emperors worry about assassins and bodyguards, ordinary Romans worry about something more basic: water. Because a city of more than 1 million people does not survive without an engineered miracle. The aqueducts. Rome has 11 major aqueducts. One of the great ones is the Aqua Claudia. It stretches about 69 kilometers from mountain springs in the Anio Valley to the city. And as it enters Rome, it becomes a monument. Massive stone arches, rising about 27 meters high, roughly as tall as a 9-story building, carrying water in a channel on top. Romans walk beneath these arches every day. They look up and see one of the greatest engineering achievements of the ancient world, delivering fresh water over their heads. No pumps, no electricity, just gravity and precision. The Aqua Claudia alone is described as delivering enough water to supply hundreds of thousands of people every single day. And remarkably, sections of it still stand nearly 2,000 years later. But Rome is not only temples and arenas and aqueducts. Rome is a living city. So where do people actually live? Picture yourself as a regular Roman, a shopkeeper, a craftsman, a worker. You wake up in an insula, a multi-story apartment building packed with families like yours. About 90% of Romans live in these buildings. They rise 5 or 6 stories high, built cheaply from brick and wood, cramped rooms, thin walls, constant noise. The higher you live, the cheaper the rent. Also, the more danger you accept. No running water, no kitchen. If a fire breaks out, you are trapped above the flames, rushing down narrow stairs as smoke fills the corridor. Collapses and fires happen so often that emperors eventually pass laws limiting how tall these buildings can be. This is ancient Rome, but it already has the problems of modern cities: overcrowding, unsafe housing, unequal access to resources. And then, every morning, you step out into the street and you head toward work. Maybe you go to Trajan's Market. Built into the side of a hill, it is a massive complex with more than 150 shops and offices spread across multiple levels. Walk through the ground floor and you find tabernae selling everything: imported spices from the east, fresh fish from the coast, wine, olive oil, fabrics, pottery. Upstairs, you find warehouses and administrative offices where the real business of empire happens. Goods are counted, contracts are negotiated, taxes are recorded, supply lines are planned. This is the economy of an empire humming inside one building. Now the day ends, and like almost everyone else in Rome, you want to go to the place that makes the city feel civilized: the public baths. The baths of Trajan cover more than 11 hectares and can hold thousands of people at once. Bathing in Rome is not a quick rinse. It is hours. You exercise in the gymnasium. You swim. You sweat in hot rooms. Then, you shock your body with a cold plunge. You meet friends. You gossip about politics. You make business deals. You might grab a meal. Entry costs almost nothing, just a small coin. So everyone comes: slaves, merchants, even senators. All that water delivered by aqueducts ends up here, filling pools, heating rooms, giving ordinary Romans a quality of life that will not be matched in much of Europe for more than 1,000 years. And when you zoom out, you see the real achievement. Rome is the first to make a city of 1 million people work. To do it, they invent the modern city. Insulae, early high-rise apartment buildings housing most of the population. Aqua Claudia, about 69 kilometers of engineered water delivery, and an overall network that brings enormous volumes into the city, with figures often cited around 190,000 cubic meters per day for major systems in the imperial period. Trajan's Market, a multi-level commercial center, like an ancient shopping mall. The Colosseum and Circus Maximus, venues that together can hold more than 200,000 people. The Baths of Trajan, a vast public complex where social life, hygiene, and politics collide. And they build with a mindset that is both practical and arrogant. They build to last. The Pantheon's dome still stands after roughly 1,900 years, and it remains the largest unreinforced concrete dome ever built. That detail alone should stop you, because it means ancient engineers solved problems that many later societies could not solve again for centuries. Rome does not just build a city. Rome answers a question no one else had answered at this scale. How do you hold 1 million lives in one place without it tearing itself apart? Fast forward 2,000 years. New York, London, Tokyo, Shanghai. Apartment buildings follow the same basic idea as the insulae. Sports stadiums echo the logic of the Colosseum and the Circus Maximus. Public spaces, civic centers, and plazas repeat the concept of the Forum. Modernized but familiar. Concrete is still used everywhere, building on chemistry first mastered at scale by the Romans. Even if modern formulas differ, we have evolved the technology, but the foundation is still Rome. And here is the part that stays with you if you think about it long enough. Rome was born from ruin, a city burned to the ground in 390 BC, a place that should have ended. Instead, it becomes a machine so powerful, it reshapes the world. It gives people water in abundance, and it also builds arenas where death becomes a show. It creates order, and it also invites corruption so close to the throne that emperors are murdered by their own protectors. It builds temples to hold the gods, and it also turns men into gods to hold the crowd. Rome is not a fairy tale. It is a warning and a lesson at the same time. Because if a city can fall completely and still rise into something that controls continents, then the real limit is not the stone. The real limit is human ambition. So, when you look at the skyline of any modern megacity, remember this: you are not looking at a new invention. You are looking at the echo of an ancient city that solved it first. And the
But
question
look
is not what
closer.
Rome
For
was,
the true
the question is
architects of
what
the
Rome would build if it had our tools today, and what it would demand in return.